The conflict we once debated in classrooms and think tanks has become a lived reality. The world as we knew it has effectively ended. As the smoke clears, the true cost is only beginning to be felt. Not just in the region, but in every boardroom and household on the planet. This was not just a regional war. It was a global economic earthquake that targeted the very lifeblood of our modern world: energy. The economic impact traveled faster than any missile, crossing oceans and continents in a matter of heartbeats. We saw cities that never sleep suddenly fall quiet as the cost of movement became too high for the average citizen. Let us begin with the first blow: energy. To understand the crisis, we must look at the Persian Gulf. This body of water is the central nervous system of global industry. 20% of all oil passes through this single corridor. The Strait of Hormuz, only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. When the blockade began, the world economy suffered a heart attack. Ships that were once the lifeblood of global trade were suddenly trapped, or worse, targeted. The artery was severed. The Gulf became a fortress of minefields and naval blockades, making the passage of commercial tankers a suicidal mission. Global markets reacted with primal fear. Brent crude didn't just rise, it shattered all historical records in a single day. The cost of a barrel doubled, then tripled, creating a massive wave of panic across every financial hub from Wall Street to Tokyo. For the average person, this was not an abstract financial event. It was a crisis that met us immediately at the gas pump. Fuel rationing became the norm. Commuting, once an afterthought, became a luxury that millions of workers could no longer afford. The aviation industry was the first to buckle. Flight schedules were slashed as fuel costs surpassed all projected revenues. But gas is just the surface. Our entire industrial base, from plastics to electronics, is built on petroleum. Manufacturing plants worldwide were forced to halt. The components needed for everything from cars to medical devices simply stopped moving. The petrochemical sector, the silent engine of the modern world, faced a supply shock that triggered systemic failure across all manufacturing. This led directly to the second great blow: the complete collapse of global maritime trade and supply chains. Shipping companies faced skyrocketing insurance premiums. The risk of traversing the Middle East became too high for even the boldest. Vessels were forced to take the long journey around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to delivery times and millions in fuel surcharges. This detour was more than just a delay. It was a war tax applied to every single product shipped by sea, from grain to computer chips. The result was immediate. Store shelves began to empty. The abundance we had taken for granted for decades vanished in weeks. Ports became severely backlogged. Perishable goods spoiled in their containers, and critical parts failed to reach their destinations. But perhaps the most dangerous impact was on agriculture. The energy shock rapidly became a hunger shock. Fertilizer prices quadrupled. In many parts of the world, farmers simply couldn't afford to plant the next season's crops. Food insecurity began to spread, not just in developing nations, but in the heart of the global north. Survival became the primary concern. For those in colder climates, the energy shock meant a choice between heating their homes and feeding their families. A cold, hard winter. Cities reduced their power consumption. Streetlights were dimmed, and the glow of the modern world began to fade under the weight of the crisis. Beyond the financial and social ruins, we must examine the severe environmental consequences of this conflict. The destruction of industrial infrastructure released millions of tons of pollutants. The skies over the Gulf were choked with toxic soot. The marine ecosystem of the Persian Gulf suffered oil spills that will impact biodiversity for generations. A silent, toxic legacy of war. Yet human history is defined by resilience. Out of the ashes of this conflict, a forced evolution began to take shape. The sheer necessity of survival rapidly accelerated the transition away from fossil fuel dependency. Projects were fast-tracked in weeks. Innovation was no longer a choice, it was an imperative. We are seeing a fundamental rethinking of our energy security. The energy shock was the first blow. But as the world decelerated, an even more dangerous crisis was forming in the financial heart. In Part 2, we examine the market meltdown, the collapse of the petrodollar, and the realignment of global power. If you found this analysis vital, please like and subscribe for Part 2. Thank you for watching, and demand peace. I'll see you in the next chapter.